Hello, my name is Dennis D. I'm the Executive Director at the Father McKenna Center. I assumed that role on January 2nd of 2024, so 20 months ago or so. My first time at the Father McKenna Center was August 28th, 2014. So I recently celebrated my 11th year from first coming to the McKenna Center, and it's certainly it's really emotional in a lot of ways to look back at just even that 11-year period of my life. The Father McKenna Center is where I feel God put his hand on my shoulder, like where God, graced me, gave me the courage to start to make some significant behavioral changes, to take the simple, small steps towards a better life. So if I go back, I had lots of privilege. I don't like the word, but lots of privilege growing up. I went to all boys Catholic grammar school and high school. I own a grammar school and I own a prep in New York. I went to Georgetown University Law School. Was pretty good student, good enough to get a job on Wall Street at a law firm, K.O. Gordon. Spent 4 years there. Relocated to Washington D.C. To work at a law firm here called Hogan and Hartson, where everything was fine. I had gotten married. I had 3 young children. I got an opportunity around 30 years old to go work at Lehman Brothers in New York, which was kind of too good to pass up, or so I thought. Most people that grew up in Westchester County thought of Wall Street jobs as like, the pinnacle. Disregarding whether it was a good fit, you just thought that's what you were supposed to do. I went and worked at Lehman Brothers for 4 years, then had an opportunity to move over to Merrill Lynch, which was a little bit of a better job, maybe not for me, but a little bit considered a better job. Worked at Merrill Lynch for 5 years. I was at Merrill Lynch during 9/11. When I look back, that had probably more of an impact on me than I thought. I worked in a building that was across the street, across West Street from the World Trade Center. Was in the office that day. It was a pretty traumatic morning. My drinking, which was probably even going back to high school, was a bit on the reckless side, a bit on the maybe just a little bit more than like the norm. Really blossomed after the Trade Center incident. People were going out after work. It didn't take much for me to tag along. I sort of forgot I was married, forgot I had small kids, started getting home late, got into some really bad patterns. And coming from a family of alcoholics, it's just not advisable. I mean, I had taken my mom to treatment several times in my 20s. I took her to the hospital the week before she died. Like, I was the oldest son, I was the oldest child, and I was really vested in her. And so it was pretty upsetting, obviously, in my kind of mid-20s to lose her to alcoholism, and that sometimes is enough to keep you away from it. But in many homes where there's addiction, it's multi-generational. And so kind of forgot those lessons, and alcohol ended up being a way that I kind of self-medicated. My 40s were rough, it was kind of really downhill the whole 40s, and it kind of, much like if you think of as you're going downhill, you pick up speed, and that's kind of what it felt like year over year. Started to have problems at work, problems in the house, more than one, several like kind of embarrassing situations at work, work parties, getting like kind of drunk before the event even started and having to get asked to go home. And like each incident maybe is something that's happened to every one of us, maybe once in a while in our life, but the pattern of it you don't really see until much later, and in many cases until it's too late. My job, and I had a very supportive job through all this. I think that many of the Wall Street firms were sort of understanding through that difficult period. There was some financial crisis going on, kind of like 2008. I think they were really difficult. The jobs are stressful. And so the HR departments in those firms they understand that. And so I got a lot of support at work. It'd be easy to say that they weren't supportive, but they were. In fact, I was forced, I know in one instance, I was forced to just go get a consultation with a psychiatrist. And at that consultation, I'll never forget it, the psychiatrist did like a 50-question sort of questionnaire to get to know me. And only some of the questions related to drinking. It was much, much broader, much more general. And it's amazing what 50 questions you can learn about someone. And anyway, one of the questions was, could I remember the last day that I didn't have a drink? So here I am, it's probably 2010, and it was like stump the chump. I'm like thinking, the last day I didn't have a drink. And I had to think. And they're like, really the last day, not like just guessing. And it was like 2 full years prior on a particular New Year's Eve, where I lived in an area where it's like a lot of roadblocks, like especially on New Year's Eve. And I was like the designated driver for my first wife and for the neighbors. Like I drew the short straw. So that was a full 2 years. So if that's like not good if you don't realize you were a daily drinker until 2 years. And the challenge then becomes like, how do you address that problem? And what happens, you could probably tell I became an addictions counselor. What happens is your remedy is always like less than what's necessary for the situation you're in. And so over time, as you're unable to stop drinking, you keep increasing the remedy, thinking that you're gonna like address it, but you're never quite doing enough. And so an example in my case, I was asked by a job, and actually a different job. The first time they had me go see a counselor was at Merrill Lynch. I then moved to Royal Bank of Scotland, really took off professionally because it was like a kind of a white canvas in terms of the department I was in, and I really did well. A lot of clients moved over with me, nothing wrong, right? But the drinking was still there. And at the RBS job, they were even more supportive because I was producing, and so they wanted me to get better. I had a boss that was really supportive who had some family experience in recovery, and so he was awesome. And they had me go to an inpatient 90-day program. So at the end of the 90-day program, they had like a kind of a suggested treatment plan for following the program. And the counselor, Michael Johnson, remember his name, right? He said that for me to really get this, for me to really get recovery, that his recommendation was for me to move into a sober living house, even though I had a wife and family and a house to move back to in Darien, Connecticut. His recommendation would be that I spend another couple of months going back to work, but living in a sober house. So that I went back to have that structure. And he said, be prepared to do it for a couple of months until you feel really solid. And that just sounded like too much for me. And I didn't like think about it like, arrogantly, like that's too much. I genuinely felt like, that doesn't, I don't think I need to do that. It's probably exactly what I needed to do. I got home, my first wife showed me the kind of the guest room that she had set up for me to sleep in because she wasn't like ready to kind of resume like being my wife or sleeping in the same room. And I wasn't ready for that. I didn't know that was coming. It felt like she was being felt like she was being disloyal. That's not true. She just wasn't ready for it. And I kind of, within a few days, I slipped back. And it's a shame because if it might have just taken to go live somewhere and eased into my life, and I wouldn't have ended up where I ended up. So I lost the job at RBS. I had the opportunity to go work for a smaller company, a consulting firm in West Palm Beach, Florida. The main reason I took that job is because I knew if I went down there, I could drink and use as much as I wanted, and no one was around to watch me. And that's often what happens in late stage addiction, is you try to put yourself in a position to do what you really want to do, which is to kind of block out the world as much as possible. And that's when things kind of spiral very quickly. I had the apartment, I lost the job within 3 months. I lost the apartment. I was, essentially evicted within a year. It's kind of amazing when I think back. I have to sometimes pencil out that time period, just how quickly I went from this great job in New York to 18 months later, homeless in Florida. Fortunately, some of my humility and ability to kind of mix with the crowd, some of the kind of blue collar background that I had in my family, I was able to survive, and so I'm kind of grateful for that, because even homeless, I managed to I got some support from some family members, a little bit. That kind of stopped. I had a couple friends that would send me. I never thought I'd be going to get money from Western Union. I could show you the places in the hood, in West Palm Beach, which has some pretty crummy areas, in Boynton Beach. I ended up going across the state. In Florida, I took a bus over to Largo, Florida, which they sometimes call Larghetto, and not for any really good reason. I don't know. I went over there. I mean, some of this I look back and I think this was all God directed for me to get these different experiences, so that when I got my shit together and I started to work with alcoholics and addicts, particularly ones lower income, that I would have that to draw from. I became of sorts they call it a bus stop drunk in Florida, if that makes sense. You would think, how could you spend the whole day in and around one of these outdoor bus stops? But you can, and it's kind of fascinating that that's possible. It's probably, I know, it's similar to the day-to-day here. You have some parts of the day where you literally are at a loss what to do next. You might have thought it was a good idea to go spend some time in the library. I remember feeling tired all the time. And so to get somewhere where you could get off your feet and kind of exhale was pretty important. The center was a place for that in the mornings. But I would typically try to go spend some time in the library, get in a comfortable chair, kind of fall asleep without falling asleep, if you will, because if you fall asleep at a library, they're not really looking for the library to become a place where people sleep. But you try to kind of get as comfortable as you can to just kind of get some rest. And so that would be something that I would try to do to fill the days, fill the afternoons. But that wasn't always possible. There wasn't always a seat available. I found myself kind of walking endlessly, sort of pondering life. 3 weeks after arriving in DC, I was the last day that I had a drink, September 18th, 2014. I really embraced recovery. And, it's been pretty miraculous, that journey. My first year of recovery, I went to 2 meetings a day in different parts of DC, in the Georgetown area and the DuPont Circle area. They have meetings here at the center. The first meeting of my almost soon to be 11 years of recovery, my first meeting was here at the Father McKenna Center, which is pretty amazing, right? If you want to talk about history at a place, it's it's kind of hard to put into words. I don't want to call it disgusting, because that's kind of a weird way, kind of a colloquial way of putting it. But it's, the magic of it all, of this place for me personally. I met my second wife here. After 3 months here as a client, I was kind of a client for the day program for about 2 months, and then a hypothermia program client for 6 weeks. After that, I got hired as a part-time staff it's interesting now, we kind of just handing out jobs, if you will, a little bit. And in my case, I worked 10 hours a week, 12 hours a week, 15 hours a week, 18 hours a week, 21 hours a week, 24 hours a week. and then only moved to full-time after a full 9 months working here. And that was the budget situation, that was the need. In hindsight, I probably was the best thing for me. After those first 3 months as a client, I moved from the hypothermia program and moved into a sober house, Oxford House, here in town. Oxford House is very well known, wonderful way. Maybe about 5 years too late, but a wonderful way to get clean is to live in a sober living house. The statistics, are extremely supportive of how much better your odds are if you are humble enough to go live in a group house with men at, in my case at the time, 50 years old. But I worked here, and that's something that can't really put a price on, having been first a client here, homeless in DC, finally addressing my mental health challenges, like kind of full on. Where else can a person go and be the executive director where they were a client? Where can they go where they slept in the same room in shelters with the clients we serve? Where can a person go where I have 10-year relationships with some of these men? It's a dream, really, for me. If there ever is a case like, am I where I'm supposed to be? Like, come on, right?